There's always something new at the Voice of Nassau Community College.
Starting Monday, October 23rd, we have a brand new Monday night lineup. At 5 p.m., catch the WHPC sports staff as they review the weekend and preview the evening in local and professional sports on the home stretch.
Then at 6, it's Revelations, where Steve K puts an emphasis on rare tracks and hidden gems from the genres of rock, blues, soul, folk, and jazz. Uwe Riggers keeps the German hit parade going at 7. And New York Polka Bob slides down to 8 p.m. with Polka Beat. Once again, it's the home stretch at 5,
Revelations at 6,
the German hit parade at 7, and Polka Beat at 8.
All from the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
The Voice of Nassau Community College.
It's all I listen to.
90.3 WHPC.
WHPC HD, Garden City.
Available on the iHeartRadio app.
Welcome to another edition of From the Press Box here on 90.3 WHPC, streaming on the iHeartRadio app, among other places. This show will be on Spreaker/iTunes afterwards. And on the phone with me today is my brother and award-winning sports writer Tim Leonard, as Tim continues to do jury duty, like the good American that he is, the proud patriot. We can't talk about the case, of course, but you know, hopefully it settles this week. So,
well, like you said, we can't talk about the case, but we are in deliberations at this point.
Okay,
which is proving to be a new frustrating endeavor.
Well, it depends on who you get. Anyway, brother, I wasn't sure which story to start with first because there's actually 3 decent stories, but the New York Daily News has the best cover I've seen in a while. It says, "CC Save Us." So I thought I'd start with the Yankees because the Yankees are down 2-0 to the Houston Astros. And this is where CC, who's been pitched really good, this is where CC comes in and does his best, when the Yankees are down. So I figured we'd start there.
Well, CC's record now, and I'm sure the Daily News has that, I believe is 10-0 after Yankee losses. So, on one hand, he's the perfect guy to start tonight's game. On the other hand, wouldn't it be nice if Severino or even Tanaka could start, because those guys have been more recently anyway have been the more consistent options. But I have no problems with CC being on the mound tonight. Like I said, he's pitched well in games after Yankees losses. He pitched well in Game 5, although Girardi did give him the quick hook because of the gravity of that game, and managers kind of change their outlook for deciding games, be it a Game 7 or a Game 5. Just because of the nature of the game. You can't let a pitcher go too long if he doesn't have it. And once a pitcher shows that he doesn't have it, then it's time to get him out of there. So, Girardi, like I said, gave him a little bit of a quick hook, but it worked out, and I'm sure everybody was happy after the game since there was a win involved.
Yeah, I mean, Game 2 of the last series is, not forgotten, but it's not thought about the way if he had lost, or if the Yankees had lost that series. Though I have to say right now with the Yankees, right now they're reminding me of the 2015 Mets in the sense that no one expected them really to get this far. And there's also a feeling that, there's a looseness, I think, on this Yankees team the way there was on the Mets team of 2015 because, anything they get now is just gravy. And even if they don't win, even though, of course, Yankee fans always expect to win, it's not going to be as bad as I think that if it was like maybe next year or the year after when they're probably going to be expected more to, make the playoffs and even win the division. So I was wondering what you thought about that, brother.
Well, I mean, they're in it right now. So I don't think that Yankee fans will necessarily be satisfied if the Yankees wind up losing this series, and especially if they lose it badly. I mean, if Houston comes in and wins 2 out of Yankee Stadium, and then the series is over in 5, I think a lot of Yankee fans will probably be upset, like very upset. But the smart ones realize that there's a process going on, and making it this far into the playoffs and advancing to the American League Championship Series, it doesn't necessarily change that plan. And the plan is still to develop the kids who they traded for last season at the deadline, develop their own prospects who they drafted, and the ones who they kept, because they did trade a few of them at the trading deadline this season, which by the way I predicted, because the other issue that the Yankees have right now is they're going to have 40-man roster issues, because they do have so many talented kids, and they can't put them all on the 40-man roster. So from a numbers perspective, there's going to be a little bit of a crunch there, and they needed to trade some of those guys. And like the Sonny Gray deal was basically a 3-for-1, but they needed to do that to get some control over the numbers, because if you wind up with too many guys off, with the 40-man roster is involved, you're just going to lose them to waivers. So
right.
You might as well trade something for that's kind of an underreported thing in the Sonny Gray trade. When people say, "Oh wow, they gave up so much for Sonny Gray," well, you know what, they have issues with the 40-man, and that was another impetus for that trade. But for right now, I couldn't be happier with this season, as far as being a Yankee fan, because they've far exceeded my expectations at this point. And I'm not saying that if they wind up losing to the Astros that I'll be happy about it, but when you look back at this season, say a few months down the road or before next season starts, you can't help but be happy. And you made the comparison to the 2015 Mets, and that was another team that people said, well, they'll be better in 2016.
Yeah,
and then,
they were supposed to be.
Yeah, well, the future came a year or a season earlier than it was expected to, and I think that goes for this Yankee team as well. Look at the performances we've gotten out of Luis Severino, and then Severino, by all accounts, should wind up as third in the Cy Young voting behind Corey Kluber and Chris Sale. I mean, that's pretty remarkable status for a guy who, before the season started, didn't even have a rotation spot, and they thought he was going to be in the bullpen.
Right.
Look at Aaron Judge, who is a shoo-in for Rookie of the Year, and is expected to finish second in the MVP voting. And before the season started, he was a guy who, last season in a cup of coffee in the majors, the guy struck out half of his at bats, and batted 148 or whatever it was. So when you look at some of these guys, and Gary Sanchez established himself as probably the best hitting catcher in baseball, and obviously he still has some issues as far as his glove goes, and that's,
he proved it on Game 2.
Well, yeah, but that's something they're going to work on in the off season. The problem with some of these young guys is they're still learning. They're not finished products, and people expect them to be finished products, and they expect them to make all the plays. And in the last series, obviously Aaron Judge struck out entirely too much against Cleveland, and he hasn't hit yet against Houston. But who has on the Yankees? I mean, they've scored 2 runs in 2 games between Dallas Keuchel and Justin Verlander. They have 27 strikeouts in 2 games. That's a lot of strikeouts. But that means everybody's striking. It's not just Aaron Judge, and he's going to the most he can strike out is 4 times a game.
You hope.
So and he had a hit in Game 1 that should have tied the game if Greg Bird wasn't one of the slowest people alive. For some old Yankee fans, I'll say this about Bird: he's got Lou Piniella speed.
Well, Lou wasn't that slow.
No, Lou was slow.
Just because he needed a cab to round third. I mean,
Lou would be the first person to tell you. Lou was about a half a step above Molina speed.
Oh,
so that's what we're dealing with here. And he was about an inch or an inch and a half away from being safe. As far as Gary Sanchez on the play in question that you're referring to from Game 2, he did probably three things wrong on that play. And, that's something that you learn. And when you have a manager who is let's face it, Girardi made his career on his defense. It certainly wasn't with his hitting.
Right.
So that will get taught. And don't forget that Tony Pena is a Yankees coach who is one of the greatest defensive catchers in history. So they were working with Sanchez during the season when the pass ball started to become a real issue. And Girardi benched him for a couple of games because they were trying to work with him and they were trying to get him to understand the importance that, hey, a catcher's job is to play defense and to call a good game and work with the pitching staff. And he's not going to be a truly great catcher until he embraces that part of the game as well. I mean, we all know he can hit. He's by far the best hitting catcher in baseball, even after this brief period in his career. But he's the most dangerous hitter as far as catchers go. And he's got a cannon for an arm.
Right.
So as far as catchers go, that's 2/3 of the equation right there. But you need to be a good game caller, and you need to be able to handle pitches and block pitches and do all of that dirty work that catchers are expected to do. So that's the last third of it. And once he gets that, I mean, also the problem with Sanchez is he's a big guy. It makes it more difficult as far as blocking pitches and getting down and covering that area. But that's something he's going to have to learn if he's going to always be the starter and be that leader behind the plate.
Now, what about?
Otherwise, he's going to wind up as a part-time DH.
What about Houston? How good have they been playing, or are they just getting lucky?
No, they're very good. I said this earlier in the season. In fact, I probably said something to this effect. It might have been our first season. I've been waiting for the Astros to become this team that they are right now for a few years. Ever since back in the day when they drafted George Springer and started putting together much of the team that you see now. This has been a team on the rise for more than a couple of years actually. And you go back 3-4 years ago, probably I guess 4 years ago, and this was a 100-loss team, and that's how they got Carlos Correa. Because they drafted him one of the top picks in the draft. And Springer the year before him, So I mean, the core pieces that they have with Altuve, who's more than likely the American League MVP at second base. When they talk about teams being strong up the middle are the teams that win, that's what you have up the middle for those guys. So you have Brian McCann behind the plate, who they got from the Yankees, and has been a great kind of mentor. Older figure on the team because it's such a young team. But you have him, you have Carlos Beltran, who again obviously was another former Yankee. But Springer in center field, Correa at short, Altuve at second, a very good rotation, and McCann behind the plate. I mean, that's there's nothing wrong with that core. You can take that up the middle and compare it to pretty much any team in baseball, and more than likely the Astros are going to come out on top in that comparison. So this is a team that earlier in the season, before the Indians went off on their 22-game winning streak, I'm sure, and I couldn't tell you dates, but I'm sure I call the Astros the best team in the American League more than a couple of times.
I'm sure you did.
Because they have been, especially in the first half of the season, they unquestionably were the best team in baseball. Then the Dodgers started to make their move. The Indians had that big winning streak, and I personally was looking at one of those three teams as winning the World Series at the various points in the season. I can tell you, I had never at any point during the season thought the Yankees are going to win the World Series. I still don't think that. But if they can get to the World Series, then obviously they have a shot.
Yeah, we'll talk about the NL in a couple of minutes. We're going to take a break right now. You're listening to From the Press Box right here on 90.3 WHPC, streaming on the iHeartRadio app. Tim, you're at Twitter at
Real Tim Leonard.
Okay. Yo.
Tell your friends about the Nassau Morning Madhouse.
You're what you're missing.
Check it out.
Apple's coming out with a new phone. People have mixed emotions about it because price is going to be almost $1,000